Welcome to the Money Mentors Podcast.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us here on Money Mentors. It's Laurel Stewart with Gerald Green, one of our fiduciary advisors and partners of the firm here. We hoped you had a wonderful Christmas celebration this past week. And for me, I'm still in a little bit of the Christmas mode. I think that's the hard piece is I celebrate it for a good 2 months. And then after it happens, the day of Christmas, it kind of makes me feel sad that it's just abruptly over. Mm-hmm. So I need a couple more days. Maybe it's like a Christmas hangover, but I'm still celebrating with all of those beautiful lights. A couple more days before we enter into the new year.
See, that's where it's a little different for me. I have a big family. Like I have many brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins. I have a lot of family live around, but I go from our house to visit parents, to visit sister, to visit other relatives. It's just, and we don't do it all in the same day.
South.
Right. It's spread out over a couple days, and everywhere we go, I feel like Santa Claus. I'm bringing presents for those people that I'm seeing now, and I'm receiving presents. So that's a lot of work. There's times when once it's done and we've visited everyone and seen everyone to just sit back,
in your couch,
melt into the couch, and just say, and exhale. Then it was
Breathe.
good.
I get that too. Fortunately for us, our families live in a 5-mile radius from each other. That works really, really well to have those grandkids and have some co-togetherness, right? So Taylor's family has always hosted this Christmas breakfast. And ever since we were engaged, my mom and dad, and actually my grandma and grandpa and great aunt, at the time they're no longer with us, but they would actually all join in and go to this Christmas breakfast.
Aww.
So it's really fun to say that we can have that togetherness with both of our families. Great for our grandkids. So extra special. And we hope you had an amazing time. And thank you for joining us back here this weekend.
Absolutely. And continue to enjoy some of that family time. I love how Christmas kind of fell this year because a lot of people are enjoying maybe that extended holiday time into the weekend too. Maybe doing some of that post-holiday shopping, enjoying some of the sales, the football, of course, this weekend, other fun too. And I think we do find ourselves catching up with those we love in the quieter moments, maybe after all the gifts are unwrapped this time of year. But sometimes I do know too that when we finally get to catch up with our families, those conversations can sometimes lead to really interesting chats about money and family financial priorities too. So, Gerald, Laurel, any advice for maybe parents and grandparents in this situation who do have things that maybe they want to share with their families this time of year about their financial plans in terms of, maybe how to break the ice with some of their family members on these conversations?
Yeah, this is usually one of those topics that's tough to breach, regardless of the side you're on. I look at it with my kids as you're going to sit down and you're going to listen to dad for a second. And I'm like, fine.
I roll here.
Right, exactly. But something I remember growing up that conversation didn't happen from my parents to me. I know Gary talks about it in his book as well. And side note, tangent, if you're interested in that, go to our website, matsonfinancial.com, and you can get a sneak peek at that.
Yeah.
But sorry, shameless plug for Gary's book.
We love it.
It's a good Christmas.
Right?
It is. Yeah.
But it's a matter of, I like to approach it, especially when family members ask me. I'm like, well, what is your primary concern? If you come at it from a teaching standpoint, which I love to do, when other family members talk to me about what I do and ask for advice from me, I always try to seek to understand what is the real question. Because they like to joke, well, how are you investing your money? Well, that's going to be different than how you're investing yours because I have different goals, right? So if you're looking to help a family member or help a grandparent or even help your children, help educate first. Seek to understand what they know and what their ultimate goals are and what they're trying to do. And that can put you in a better position to be able to help them and offer advice that speaks uniquely to their situation.
Mm-hmm. I think the key piece about these types of conversations are they don't have to be heavy or overwhelming or long, right? You don't need to say, hey, everybody, let's get together. I want to really go over, mom and my plan, right? Because that can feel a little bit jarring, right? How do we sit down and start having this conversation? It can be that overwhelming piece. So let's keep it light. And some of those things that you can talk about are framing it around your values, right? So here's what matters most to us. And here's what we want to make sure is taken care of. Back to that teaching piece that Gerald's talking about, starting with the why without even having to discuss numbers. And I think that's the thing too is, our grandparents, they didn't talk about money. And so like the next generation, how we keep educating along the way is you still don't have to share some of those private pieces of maybe how much do you have saved, where it is exactly at the moment, but starting with the why, right? When it comes to big picture goals like your legacy intentions, your healthcare wishes, especially, I want to really emphasize that, and then your charitable desires. Because if you don't start having some of these small conversations now and sharing the why behind or making sure that's down on paper, and something happens to you or your spouse or both of you, now you have adult kids that could have some friction, right? Or maybe they're all across the country too. And so maybe one is more responsible than the other, and then they start resenting each other, or they start fighting and saying, no, I wanted that car. I wanted that cutting board. We've seen people fight about the smallest things that you might not think are big. Mm-hmm. So how do you start having those conversations to coordinate now to avoid that friction later during wealth transfers? Because family harmony is the most important thing. And we often talk about with our clients to say, if you're no longer here and all of your kids are around at a table, what does that look like to you, right? Are they sitting around the table together, talking, still getting together during the holidays? Or are they so disconnected and now just only in their own families? How can we help make sure that family legacy and harmony is a priority? And that's what we do here at Mattson Financial, because we really focus on those multi-generational conversations.
It's so important, and especially this time of year while family is top of mind, and perhaps while you have this kind of conversation on your mind, might be time to get started on some of your financial plans and how you want to include them in that. So for our listeners this weekend, why don't we go ahead and make that offer to a few of them to come in and start that conversation with you.
If you've saved at least $250,000 for retirement and want help building your own Mattson map, including how to plan for family conversations, be one of the first 5 callers right now. Schedule your complimentary visit with our team and get your personalized roadmap for 2026. Contact us at 800-536-8907. Again, that's 800-536-8907.
And you can reach our team again at that number. Leave a message this weekend. They'll return that call when we get back from our Christmas break, too. And we know a lot of you are busy right now, but take a few minutes this weekend. Just takes a couple minutes right now to leave us just some basic information, your name, your phone number. Best time to reach you now at 800-536-8907. And on that first visit at Mattson Financial Services, too, our team is happy to share that copy of Gary's book with you as well. What Your Parents Never Told You About Money. You can find it on Amazon as well, or as Gerald mentioned there, you can find more at our website, MattsonFinancial.com. You can even set up a 15-minute phone call there with our team as well. That's Mattson with 2 T's, financial.com. Well, a new Vanguard survey says Americans are in for a resolution rebound coming up in 2026, with 84% of us setting some type of financial resolution for the new year. For baby boomers, though, the biggest concern is some type of unexpected expense. So how do you recommend we prepare for those unexpected things that do pop up in retirement?
Well, I mean, it starts with just having a conversation. We know you're always going to have unexpected expenses, whether you're 18 or 80. Things like that happen. So the most common conversation I have with my clients is always make sure you have an emergency fund, anywhere from 3 to 6 months minimum of cash in the bank, because where a lot of my clients face the most adversity is if that unexpected expense happens in retirement, and say they need $15,000 for, whether it's a medical expense or they have to replace the furnace and the air conditioner, whatever, or a new roof, whatever that looks like, something that you're not doing on your time, it's being forced to happen. Have that money in the bank, because you may have plenty of assets, investable assets, that you're taking income from and using that for your day-to-day income. But if that expense happens when the markets are in a correction status, say they're down 15, 25%, well, the chances of you having to sell some of your positions at a loss are much higher. And you don't want to sell at a loss, because either you have to take more risk to get back to even, or you just never get back to even, or you have to reduce the amount of money you had planned on taking until the markets do recover. So the biggest way to prepare for unexpected expenses, because you can never predict the timing, but you can plan for that unexpected expense by having money in the bank.
And that's one of the first things, and I would encourage you, we were talking a lot about the family aspect and helping those younger ones and educate them too, but we've got a tool, kind of a philosophy that we call the ABCDs of investing. And so we're happy to share this with you listeners out there if you want to share this with your kids or grandkids too. But that's the core focus, is first and foremost, when you're starting to save, you need to make sure you have your emergency bucket set up. But also we need to make sure that that emergency bucket is earning interest, right? So if it's sitting at a bank, where's the best position for that to get as much interest earned on it instead of just getting, oh yeah, I got my 10 cents, right? So how is it still positioned to where it's working as hard as you did for it is very key. And then from there, once we have that emergency piece built up, then is when the bigger diversified investment strategy comes into play. And so I think that's a really key component. And if, like Gerald's talking about, it's not a if, I guess it's more of a when, right? When unexpected things happen like that, and you have to take from your emergency side of it, well, guess what? Now we refill that, right? So we've got a lot of processes in place and things that we do when we start mapping out your income and your Matson map to make sure that you don't have to be pigeonholed into a scenario of, yep, you're going to cash, or yep, we're only taking from lost positions. That's not a good active management strategy. So we have a different approach here at Matson Financial.
That is a very important piece of it, though, to understand that, hey, these things will still come up in retirement. You have to be prepared for those things that, might cost you $1,000, $5,000, even $10,000. They do still happen. So the team at Matson Financial, though, they've walked through these different scenarios with their clients. They can help you set up some of those emergency savings buckets as part of your retirement income plan. But if you want to find out more about how to do that, take advantage of our special offer this weekend. Come in and have those conversations with us at 800-536-8907. Or you can always find more retirement resources at matsonfinancial.com. That's Matson with 2 T's. Financial.com. But up next, a couple of areas where inflation might hit you the most coming up in the new year. We'll talk about it next year with Laurel and Gerald as Money Mentors continues right here on Wood Radio.
Want weekly lessons from your money mentors? Yes. Hit the subscribe button now and listen every weekend on Wood Radio.
Inflation impacts just about everything these days. And here's another example for us heading into the new year. Medicare premiums. In fact, USA Today points out that Medicare costs will actually eat up most of the Social Security cost of living increase coming up for 2026. So I'm wondering from you two, does that tend to catch people by surprise when they see how the numbers work out on this yearly basis? Because you think, okay, I'm getting a Social Security raise, yay, but there it goes out the window on the other side.
It's kind of like become the annual joke now. It's, clients realize that they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to get a raise in my Social Security and it's going to come in, but guess what? My Medicare premiums are going up, so instead of getting $50 more, I get $10.
Yay.
Or whatever it is.
I mean, it's Part B premium is rising to $202.90, so up nearly 9.7%. And then you talk about that Social Security COLA is about 2.8% on average. There's still a 7% increase there that you're feeling.
Yeah, so I think the average increase of the Social Security benefit was about $50. The cost of Medicare is going up by $20. So they're taking almost half of that average increase to your Social Security. And depending on when you took Social Security, it could be most of the increase is going to the added Medicare premium. So again, it's another factor when you're talking about what your retirement plan looks like. Talking about Social Security isn't, well, I just want to take it as early as I can. I got to make sure I get my money out of it. Well, that's one strategy, but you have to understand that, okay, if we're going to get these cost of living raises and then also Medicare is going to go up year over year, you have to factor that in too. So having a plan to try and optimize that benefit can really help reduce the stress that you have on your investable assets. That's less you would have to take out later on because you have a higher guaranteed income from that Social Security. So you got to look at everything. I get the premise of, hey, I just want to get my money, make sure I get all the dollars I can. And I'm all for it. I don't want
Paid into it.
Right. I don't want Uncle Sam keeping any more of your money either, but I don't want an emotional decision to affect your financial well-being.
But that is one of those pieces that we do that Social Security maximization report as a part of your income planning pillar because they all work together.
It's funny, too, is most of the time the conversation is around, hey, I want to get my money out faster. Like I'm going to take it at 62. It's from our higher net worth clients where it's kind of the cherry on top of the plan. But the ones who, have saved throughout their working career, maybe are retiring with $500, $700, maybe $1 million, they're very, very precise and want to see all the data on when to take Social Security and let's wrap in that Medicare plan, that healthcare plan. How much is that going to cost me before on the Affordable Care Act or whatever that is? But my clients who are the ultra high net worth clients, they're the ones that, nope, I'm taking it at 62. I want to
I want to use it now. It's that benefit. Give it to me.
They're like, I want to take it now, but that may not be the best thing, especially because also that's going to affect usually the amount of money their spouse gets. And when I show them that, that's really where it hits home to say, okay, let me take a step back, remove the emotion from the decision making, and really look at the facts.
Yeah. Interesting stuff here. So a lot goes into that decision. But here's the thing. I think most of us think that maybe we'll end up spending less money in retirement. But Forbes points out most of us will spend at least the same amount, maybe more in certain areas in retirement. They mentioned 3 specifically here where your spending actually might increase. So I thought we'd talk about these this weekend because housing is actually one of those on their list. Now, I think a lot of our listeners think, well, I'm just going to stay in the house that I've always stayed in, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that your prices won't go up because you still have to factor in things like property taxes, maintenance costs. I mean, it doesn't necessarily stay the same.
And even remodeling, right? That's one of those goals. Like, hey, we had kids and we helped them get through college. And now I really love to cook. So we really want to do some remodeling in the kitchen. But it kind of comes back to this conversation before you pour all this money back into your house. Like, let's step back and with who's in front of us and say, when one of you, gets sick or if you need some additional care, what does that scenario look like for you? Is that saying, I want to go into a home, I don't want to be a burden on my spouse? Or is that, I want to have in-home care and we need to make sure this house is set up for if you need those things? Because the last thing you want to do is pour all this money into your house and then say, actually, we want to go get a condo in Florida, right? So these are some of the conversations that we found our clients are thinking about, but maybe haven't had a flushed through conversation with somebody to really know how to navigate this as a couple.
Right. It's a common thing I hear when I sit down with clients is, well, we want more money early on when we retire because we're not going to spend as much when we're, 75 as we are 65.
They're thinking about go-go years.
Right, exactly. So, they're like, yes, chances are you're not spending it on that entertainment, that travel, things like that, maybe newer cars, but maybe your healthcare costs have gone up. Your property taxes have gone up. Homeowners insurance, like those are the things that continue to increase year over year. The 2 biggest costs that don't go down are healthcare and housing. Like if you choose to sell a house, sell your primary residence and downsize into something smaller and reduce that, great. I don't want the success of your plan to rely on you selling that house.
Right.
If it's something you choose, great. But let's not make it a piece or a main fixture of your plan. Let's just plan for that income that you need.
And also, Gerald, you brought up healthcare costs, right? That's the other big thing like we were talking about here. And my goodness, do they go up and up every single year? I think one thing that's really confusing to a lot of people is, 65, I get Medicare, right? That's going to get me through. Well, Medicare doesn't cover everything, especially that long-term care. So we have Medicare Matt in our office, that health solutions pillar that we focus on to make sure we're having conversations to know, what do your premiums look like? What kind of prescription drug coverage do you need? Because a lot of times we had found that individuals signed up for a plan and honestly, they never spoke to their agent again for years. And how much does life change, right? It needs to be, again, an active strategy all under one roof, because if you're able to, maybe you're on a health insurance plan and you're able to have a subsidy, well, that means you have an income cap. You can't go over a certain limit. And if your advisor and your health insurance agent aren't communicating, you're going to blow up your supplemental plan over here, your subsidy, because you took too much income. We've seen that too. So that's why you need to make sure you have a Medicare strategy. What about Medigap or Advantage decisions? And then those long-term care solutions or alternatives if something should happen, we don't want to be reactionary, right? We want to make sure we have tools and plans in place that are flexible if you need it.
For sure. And then the last one on their list here is discretionary spending. That often goes up for retirees because think of all the extra time you have. You're filling that time with maybe some extra hobbies, some travel. Those costs can add up pretty quickly too in retirement.
And if you're, on Facebook or you're getting ad targeted all the time,
Yes.
right? And you're pressing shop now buttons, I'm telling you, right? Convenience.
Yeah, you can see that discretionary spending. I've read reports where it can fluctuate 20% from one year to the next.
Yeah.
So that is a big swing when you're thinking about your income. So just think of a standard retirement income of $100,000. Well, some years you may spend 120, some years you may spend 80, right? So how are you adjusting your plan and your investment strategy to align with those spending fluctuations? Some are going to be planned. I have some clients that are great about, hey, Gerald, in 2 years, we're taking the whole family, we're going here. We know we're going to need $15,000 or whatever it may be for that trip. And then I have some clients who I love to death, and they call me the day after they book it and say, Gerald, we just booked a family trip for everyone. We need $15,000.
Same planning, just depends on the timeline.
Right? So it's a matter of communicating what's the best way to execute on these dreams, these goals, and these desires without impacting the long-term success of your plan.
Absolutely. And we know that for our listeners, too, that is a big concern today because of what we've seen with inflation over the last several years. So for our listeners who, want to realistically plan for the kind of income they will need over the course of, 20, 30 years, maybe even more in retirement, how can they get started on that plan with you?
If you're getting ready to retire or already retired, be one of the first 5 callers right now at 800-536-8907. And we'll walk you through your Medicare costs, Social Security timing, and what inflation really means for your spending here in 2026. Call now for your complimentary Matson Map review. Again, that's 800-536-8907.
Our team will take your calls in the order they were received this weekend. You can always leave us a voicemail, too, if you get that. 800-536-8907. Or simply schedule that 15-minute phone call. You can do that through our website, too, at matsonfinancial.com. Just click that Schedule Now button there. Matson with 2 T's, financial.com. But next, getting older has its perks tax-wise, especially with some recent tax law changes. We'll explain that next after the news right here as Money Mentors continues on Wood Radio.
You're listening to the Money Mentors Podcast.
Welcome back here to the Money Mentors Podcast. Thanks for checking us out. You can find more retirement resources online anytime at matsonfinancial.com. Well, if you're trying to stay sharp, as we all get a little bit older, there may be something to picking up that smartphone. There's some new research that shows, just using those everyday apps, even things like GPS, texting, and social media, that kind of thing, will keep you from having some of that cognitive decline later in life. Thought that was kind of fascinating.
I don't know if I believe the GPS maps part because I follow it blindly.
Yes.
Right? So it doesn't necessarily make me think more by using it. I think it does the opposite,
Well,
right?
no, because you're multitasking. You're driving. Okay, I've got
Which
a right
you're
turn
not
coming up.
supposed to do. It's bad.
Multitasking is good. It keeps all the brain synapses firing, and that's my medical opinion.
Yeah. I just remember back in the day when Dad would print off his Quest maps,
MapQuest.
Quest maps. Man, Lord have mercy over this morning.
I can't, Jennifer.
So his MapQuest, right? He would print them out. I was young, okay? And they were in his seat. And that seems like, probably not good if you're looking at that and trying to look at the road. However, that you had to make more sense of. So that's an interesting
that's
one.
where your mom should have been reading the directions as the navigator. Mom's job, Nancy, was the navigator.
Mom and I are not navigators. So.
Yeah, Gary
Bless
might have
Dad.
fired them as navigators.
Yes. Dad is great, and he is our GPS. And now Taylor's taking that over. He is a great GPS as well.
Thank goodness, right? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm with you, Laurel. I just blindly follow the Google Maps, and then I'm like, how did I get here? I wouldn't be able to find my way out of the place without it. So
Too dependent.
Goodness. Yeah,
but hey.
Exactly. But yeah, good to know that, hey, sometimes the smartphone use is a good thing for us too. So,
Well, you got to be careful there, because this was a conversation I was having with my son over the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
I tried explaining what an atlas was and how we all had them in the car.
uh-huh.
And that's how we got places, like before GPS, before smartphones. I had a big old book in the car. It was a roadmap of every state. He's like, how big was that book? I'm like, it was a pretty good sized book.
Yes.
Goes through
Hefty.
both seats, really.
Hefty.
But then I would look at that map and, okay, I got to take Route 60 and then make a left turn onto I-75. Like, you got to plan it out. It took time and patience. You couldn't just put in an address and go. Like, you had to plan.
And pull over from time to time to see where you were.
Yep.
So.
Yep. He's like,
Verify.
Dad, you are old, I believe is what he said.
Thanks,
son.
Porter.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Yeah, it's a good reminder of how far we've come for sure. So thankful for the technology today to help get us there faster. But it turns out, too, there are a lot of benefits for us today in terms of getting older, at least tax-wise, too. Yahoo Finance's Carrie Hannon says there are some actual new tax benefits for seniors to look forward to come tax time, courtesy of the recently passed One Big Beautiful Act.
Yeah, so this was kind of a big thing that came through in the new tax bill, is that seniors, if you're 65 or older, get a temporary $6,000 tax deduction in addition to the standard deduction for 2025, 2026, 27, and 2028. So it's just a short time, and this is phased out on your income level. So I think it's individuals are at 75,000, couples at 150,000. That 6,000 gets, so that's a maximum of 6,000 for that. So that's one bump that retirees can look forward to.
So with these changes, would it make sense for someone to sit down, revisit that tax strategy if they haven't in a while? Because this does sound pretty significant if you're in those income windows she mentioned there.
Yeah, these are the exact conversations I'm having with clients. We're sitting down and we're doing the math as a result of this. The initial reaction was like, oh, okay, well, we can leverage this to maybe do an IRA to Roth conversion. Mm-hmm. If you're an individual and you're under $75,000 of income, let's take an additional $6,000 and convert it over to the Roth, because you've got an additional $6,000 deduction. So that's kind of like free income.
Yep. Use it to fill up that tax bracket, not go over into the next one, right? But
Correct. And for most people, the math does work, but depending on everything else, like there's other factors, whether you're still working, are you on Social Security? Because it's not just that, because that's still creating a taxable event. Like you're going to have to pay taxes on that, right? It goes on that adjusted gross income line. So that could change the taxability of your Social Security, which if I was doing the math for one client, they were paying taxes on 25% of that Social Security income. Had we taken that additional income and done a Roth conversion, now they're paying taxes on 85% of their Social Security. It moved them that much. So it made a big difference in the total tax they paid. Not only the tax on the conversion, but the additional tax on the Social Security income. So to your question, Jennifer, we got to sit down. We got to do the math. Absolutely. It means let's revisit it. Let's see if we need to adjust things. Maybe instead of 6,000, we can do 3. I don't want to just give it away and not do anything, generally speaking. But let's figure out, especially if your situation is fairly structured from year to year, that we can plan on it. But if it's a little more fluid, maybe you're kind of retiring, maybe you're not going to retire, or you've got some capital gains that you harvested, you got to take all that into consideration to do the math.
For sure. And for our listeners, though, I think this is such an important issue. Again, there have been so many different changes, not just with this bill, but you look back at, Secure Act, the first version, Secure Act 2.0, so many different changes just in the last few years. If someone hasn't really sat down with that fiduciary advisor who also has that tax picture in mind, they might be missing out on some real benefits here. So for someone who wants to go ahead and get on the calendar now here, coming up in 2026, how can they do that with us this weekend?
Yeah, if you're retired or getting ready to retire and you want to know how the new tax laws impact your 2026 strategy, call now, 800-536 8907. Be one of the first 5 callers, and we'll build your personalized Matson map, your income, tax, and investment plan for the next stage of life. So be one of those first 5 callers. Again, 800-536-8907.
And you can always access our calendar, too, through matsonfinancial.com. Click that Schedule Now button there to schedule a simple 15-minute phone call, a getting-to-know-you chat about your specific questions. Again, that's matsonfinancial.com. Now, a trend we've noticed in recent years is more people deciding to retire earlier, some even in their 50s. So in these cases, they might need to draw their retirement funds out of their accounts earlier than the age of 59 and a half. Now, Forbes notes there's a smart loophole for unlocking those funds if you need them. But tell us about what's known as the rule of 72T and how complicated is that?
How much time do we have left in the show?
Right?
This is one of those rules where I'm glad it's there because it's kind of an out for those extreme circumstances. But what the rule of 72T provides is it allows you to access those funds prior to age 59 and a half without that 10% early withdrawal penalty on your taxes. So if life changes, a curveball happens, and you need to start withdrawing funds, if you set it up in a structured way, then you can access those funds without paying an additional 10% penalty in taxes.
Because remember, 59 and a half is that magical number, right, to where you can take from your IRA, your accounts like that, without having that penalty. So
Right.
if you are prior than 59 and a half and you take money out, like Gerald's talking about, you would have a 10% penalty.
Right.
But if you put this plan in place for the 72T, that will allow you to have those penalty-free withdrawals using, you can call them SEPs if you will, but substantially equal periodic payments. But they have to continue. There's always an asterisk, right? You got to kind of meet the rules, and those payments must continue for 5 years or until age 59 and a half, whichever is longer. You can't skip, you can't adjust, or you got penalties. Right. So it's really specific.
Yep. And even if you mess up accidentally, they're going to go back and charge you 10% penalty on everything. Yeah. So you really got to do the math. So someone who takes it out at 54, they're thinking, well, 59 and a half, that's 5.5 years. But depending on the timing of it, that may be 6 distributions when you're thinking, oh, I only have to take out 5. Nope, it's those, like Laurel was saying, those substantially equal periodic payments. They're on a fixed schedule. You have to do it X amount of times in order to avoid the 10% penalty. Sometimes what I've done before with clients is just looked at the situation on what's better. If this is a short-term problem, hey, let's maybe just take the 10% penalty rather than locking in for 5 years those distributions where something may change and you don't need to. Let's take the one-time 10% tax hit. Or depending on how old you are, if you're over 55, there's also a rule called the rule of 55. So if you leave a company and you have money in a 401k, 403b, after you turn 55, if you leave that company, you can take distributions from those accounts without that 10% tax penalty as well. So there's a lot of options. You need to talk through what is specifically driving your need right now, what is the time frame for that need, and what are all the options you have available to you.
And I think the big asterisk there, I want to make sure I'm like alert, right? Everybody pay attention to is, don't go about this alone.
Right.
You know, our team, from our client services team to our advisors, everybody is trained on how to handle these types of calls with companies to make sure what's available, but also rollover calls to make sure there's no additional tax implications that you didn't foresee, right? But we also know how to position this. And like Gerald's talking about is this rule of 55. That's really crucial because if you didn't know that and you didn't have a fiduciary advisor who's very educated on these things, then they might suggest rolling your funds over into an IRA outside of that employer plan. Now you don't get that rule of 55 anymore.
Correct.
That's off the table. That only exists with it being in that employer plan. So you might need to leave some money there in order to get you through a few years, right? All of that strategic planning is what we do day in and day out, and we're really good at, right? Our advisors take the time to understand your dreams, your goals, your desires, figure out the timing, and then give you the best recommendations possible so you have the least tax implications as well.
Laurel's right. These are tricky rules when it comes to retirement, and you don't want to get these things wrong. A lot of times there are some significant penalties, especially when we're talking about tax laws, and getting these things right is so crucial, especially if you do want to retire early. There's nothing wrong with that, but you do need to know how to do it correctly. So if you need some help with your money mentors and how to structure that plan for yourself, go ahead, schedule that visit with us this weekend at Matson Financial Services. Reach out to us. Again, our number is 800-536-8907, 800-536-8907. And you can always find more retirement resources through our website, too, at matsonfinancial.com. But next, planning to retire, let's say in the next year. We'll walk you through that scenario coming up next as Money Mentors continues right here on Wood Radio.
Getting you not just to, but through retirement. This is the Money Mentors Podcast.
Thanks so much for joining us. Each week, we like to try to make retirement a little easier for you. And a lot of us start to enter goal-setting mode this time of year. For some, that means setting a retirement goal for 2026. So this week, I thought we would walk through a hypothetical scenario for someone who maybe plans to retire, say, in the next year, based on some of the recent calls that we've had from listeners here on Money Mentors. So I'll call them here Jack and Donna. We'll say both are in their early 60s here. Jack's 62, Donna just a little younger at 61. And let's say both would like to retire toward the end of 2026. So they've got a full year to think about this. So let's talk about their scenario here and their numbers. $1.2 million saved for retirement, $750,000 say in their IRAs, $250,000 in their current work 401ks, and maybe $200,000 in a self-directed brokerage account, checking and savings, things like that. So their current combined income as a working couple, $175K a year, and both would like to wait until their full retirement age to claim Social Security. But they also want to make sure with you as Money Mentors that they're making the right decision on that. Now, for a lot of couples today who are retiring in their early 60s, like a lot of them, their biggest concern would be covering healthcare costs until they're 65. And then they also have family, 3 adult kids, 1 still in college, and they still help with about $20,000 of expenses for that student. Once they graduate, though, they kind of estimate that they'll probably spend that $20K on their 2 current grandkids and
I'm sure
adding more in the future, right? So they're not going to necessarily just take that $20K for themselves. They'll just kind of divert it elsewhere. So they also know, too, a lot of our listeners like to do this, too. They want a big trip at the end of 2026 to celebrate their retirement, go out with a bang, right? So
yeah.
Also wonder, though, how much can they safely spend on that trip without sabotaging that first year of retirement? Because after all, they want to go big, but they don't want to go too big. So they want to talk about that. So let's talk about this scenario here. Where would you start with a couple like this who, they've saved really well, they have a goal in mind, but they're not quite sure where to go next?
I thought it was Jack and Diane.
we should have gone with that, right?
Right. We're using hypothetical. No, there's a lot of information here. I like how there's goals set in. Hey, we know we want to do this. We want to take the trip. We're helping with college now for 1 adult kid and probably grandkids, maybe more later on. So they understand that they've had conversations around this is what we want to continue to do. That's great because that speaks to income. We know what their combined income is right now, $175,000 a year. What I don't know is that gross or is that net? We have to start talking about taxes here. Also, the good thing here as we break down the initial information is they have the buckets filled. So they have tax deferred. They have $200,000 in a self-directed brokerage account, so what we call non-qualified, so that's taxable. We need to start talking about tax-free. So how do we get dollars over into Roth for later on and then do it all within the confines of that healthcare, that IRMA structure? Because if you go above a certain income limit, now your healthcare is going to cost more once you get to Medicare age.
I mean, it's 2 years, right? So if you're 65, you're signing up for Medicare, your premiums are based off of your income 2 years prior.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So it's not just what are you doing now? You got to look at those ages later on and start building in that plan. So the first thing I would do with this client is let's talk about their hard cost of living expenses, not the college stuff, not the trip stuff. This is how much are your property taxes? What are your insurance? How much are you spending on groceries, current prescriptions or things like that? What is your cost of living right now? There's nothing fun about the cost of living. That's just paying the bills and putting food on the table. There's no trips. There's no entertainment budget in that. It's just what is your hard cost of living? I want to start there.
Yep, that's that critical income need we're talking about.
Correct. From that piece, then we take a look at now you know what you're spending on all the other stuff. So if you said our cost of living is $5,000 a month, and then we see you're on average taking $8,000 a month out of the bank accounts, well, that tells me your lifestyle is $3,000 a month. So now I've got that baseline number that I need to start coming up with that investment strategy to provide that $8,000 a month, which is what you're accustomed to. When you retire, like we say all the time, you're not going to spend less. You're going to spend as much, if not more.
Yep. And the thing is, too, like Gerald's talking about, to make sure we're looking at is they have $1 million in pre-tax, and I think required minimum distributions at 73. If we don't do anything about that now, what is that going to look like later? But also $175,000 combined income. That's probably what the 22% tax bracket. So we also need to look at every dollar that they would take out is going to be, 22 cents that they need to inflate, right, to cover different costs. So if that's their vacation costs, those things from their accounts. So it's not just what do you need? Here you go. We're going to send it to you. There's a lot of strategic thinking that needs to go through this to say, where are you taking your income from? When do we take Social Security? Because they talk about they want to wait till that full retirement age. So likely, 67? But we're going to look at some different scenarios too, because if we need to take a lot more from the portfolio in the beginning, maybe we need to turn on some Social Security to alleviate some of that pressure in the beginning. But these are kind of all of those if, then, when we're going to run these scenarios and see kind of behind the scenes, what if we take early? What if we wait till full retirement age? What kind of pressures on the portfolio? How does this affect that surviving spouse as well? Right.
And then when they talk about healthcare costs, it's not just healthcare today, at 65 with Medicare. It's what are your healthcare costs going to be when you're in your 80s? Or do we want to plan for an assisted living facility? Are you going to try and age in place in the home and maybe have someone come into the house? There's all these different options that we can help try to prepare for. We can't guarantee the timing on any of these or that you'll need any of them. My goal is I live to be about 107 and I get hit by the bus just walking down the street and I'm never in an assisted living facility a day in my life, right?
Right.
But, it's still having a plan and being adaptable is key. Let's talk about income. How do we cover? Okay, if this happens, then you can do this. But if this happens, then you can do this. A plan is not a rigid set it and forget it thing.
And then as we really dig into this health insurance piece more, retiring at 61 and 62 means that we've got a gap that we need to plan for until 65 at Medicare. That's 3, maybe 4 years. So that's a lot of conversation where Medicare Matt would come into place, or Marketplace Matt in this case would come into play to say, what does that gap coverage look like? We need to make sure we're planning for these things. And also on our end, we're going to talk about using an HSA. How can we make sure you get that triple tax kind of effect on the HSA. So how do we use all of these different resources and things that are out there to their benefit, right? To every client's benefit, because that's what they're there for. We just need to use them properly.
And then what about the trip part of this? I want to get to the fun part.
Yeah.
And planning that. How do you help people determine how much they can safely spend on a really big purchase in retirement? Not just at the beginning of retirement, but really any year.
I think that's the fun thing of what we do is because through that conversation in the first initial meeting, when we get to know you and you equally get to know us, we're going to talk about your goals. And right when they talk about this retirement kickoff trip, and honestly, I can see this already with hearing their family aspect, that they're probably going to be one of those families that wants to take the kids and the grandkids on vacations throughout to have that experience. So what we're going to do is make sure that these pieces of these investments are tied towards that goal, right? So how do we make sure that we have, is it $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 set aside for this trip? We're going to map it out So you can see year over year, okay, 2026 is when you're retiring. That's when this whole plan starts. And you're going to see, here's your income goal, but maybe there's an additional 30,000 on top here because of that trip. And then here comes the next year, right? And the next year after that. And every year as you age, it's going to look different because at some point it's going to show, here's when you start taking Social Security. Here is where we're going to try to add in some Roth conversions if it makes sense, but keeping in mind, are we still in the 22% tax bracket, or somehow can we look at things and make sure we're doing Roth conversions in the 12% tax bracket, because that makes a lot more sense. Mm-hmm. So overall, you're going to see this in front of you, and then likely in a couple years, you're going to say, we're going to want to do this trip again, or call Gerald or Taylor, one of our team members here, and say, we want to do X, Y, Z. Okay, great. We're going to put it into the plan and make sure, what do taxes on top of that look like? What's going on with the markets? Because based on what's going on in the markets is where we need to make sure we're taking from. We don't want to take from a loss position. So we've got diversified strategies in place to make sure you have exactly what you need no matter what the markets are doing.
So for our listeners out there, again, a lot of people do kind of start that goal setting mode this time of year. So for someone who maybe has retirement on their mind, say in the next year or so, and they'd like to get started on that plan, how can they come in and start these conversations with us?
Yeah, let's make sure we're mapping out so you can see your own version of Jack and Donna's plan. See what that looks like for you. So you can be one of those first 5 callers right now at 800-536-8907. And let's build your Matson map together so you can step confidently into retirement.
Again, our team will be standing by for a few minutes after today's show. If you get the voicemail this holiday weekend, too, just know that we'll return that phone call first thing on Monday at 800-536-8907. 800-536-8907. Or you can always set up a 15-minute phone call. Access our calendar through our website at matsonfinancial.com. And, of course, be sure to join us here again next weekend to start the new year right here on Money Mentors.
At Matson Financial, our mission is simple: to help you and the people you love retire with confidence. Because retirement isn't just the finish line, it's the next chapter in your story. Thank you for tuning in.
Want weekly lessons from your money mentors? Yes. Hit the subscribe button now and listen every weekend on Wood Radio.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Fee-based financial planning and investment services are offered by Matson Financial Services, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Insurance products and services offered through Lakeview Financial Group, LLC, Matson Financial Services, LLC, and Lakeview Financial Group are affiliated. To find out if Matson Financial Services is licensed in your state, please call 800-536-8907.